So, 2016, like any other year, has had its fair share of disappointments across all fields of entertainment. Now, while the music industry has had it pretty rough,
I was you, I'd wanna be me too.
And the movie industry even worse.
Why did you say that name?
It's his mother's name. It's his mother's name.
The game industry has also had its fair share of products that just failed to live up to the expectations that had been set for them. In this video, I'll be going over my picks for the most disappointing games of 2016. Remember that these aren't bad games. In fact, some of these games are technically really good games. Disappointment just happens to be a function of expectations versus reality. The bigger the expectations I had for the game, the bigger the potential disappointment when the game fails to deliver. Now, before I get started, I'd like to recognize two games. That's No Man's Sky and Mighty No. 9. Most people, I'm sure, would agree that these two are the most disappointing games of the year. Mighty No. 9, which promised to bring an amazing experience to fans of the Mega Man series, ended up being a below-average game and pretty much dealt another huge blow to the Kickstarter system of crowdfunding games. No Man's Sky, on the other hand, is what I consider to be the most high-profile con job that I've witnessed in the last 5 years. The plain and simple fact here is that the game that was marketed by Sean Murray and his team was never delivered. We instead got just about the most mediocre indie exploration game this side of Steam, insultingly sold at a AAA price. I bring these two games up because they will not feature on my list. Why? Well, for Mighty No. 9, I just didn't really have high expectations because I got to know about the game really late into its production life cycle. Only after the whole anime fans on prom night debacle did I actually hear about the game, so it was a bit too late for me to jump aboard the hype train at that point. And as for No Man's Sky, it just really isn't my type of game, so I was never interested in the product from the very beginning. I don't care about an infinite in-game universe, as I usually gravitate towards games with more clearly defined objectives and goals. Now, that being said, I did want to recognize them as I know that they affected a lot of gamers this year. So let's now take a look at my top 5 disappointing games of 2016. Number 5.
The hero does not cower to death, for that would belittle life. The hero knows he cannot defeat danger, but for a moment, he can free others from fear.
You know, cutscene heavy trailers can be really fun. They tend to be able to give us a broad idea of what the tone and setting for the game is and what kind of world we are to expect when we get into this game. They also tend to be more focused and cohesive as they are approached in pretty much the same way as movie trailers. Unfortunately, sometimes you get a few games where the cutscene heavy trailer hides the lackluster gameplay that awaits. That's the unfortunate case with our number 5 game, Mafia III.
Involved in the robbing of the Federal Reserve.
We can have a lot of fun.
There's gonna be a lot of heat coming down off of what we've done tonight.
You need to relax, Sal.
Hey, we're gonna pull this off.
Most people that saw the trailers for this game will agree that they looked amazing, promising this new take on the Mafia series. The trailers not only had amazing animations and voice acting, but they promised a very interesting and intense game. To be fair though, the story of Mafia 3 is actually good and the scenes are as amazing as the initial trailers promised. However, the gameplay sections of the game might as well have been hired from a different company because they range from forgettable to frustrating depending on your mood. The game was not only incredibly repetitive, even by video game standards, but it had shockingly little variety and the controls just felt really clunky. It looks like most of the effort here was placed on the story and cutscenes and not the gameplay itself, and even as a guy that places a higher priority on story, the jarring difference between the two shocked me enough to land this game on this list, though only as number 5. I just expected so much more from the Mafia series, I guess.
Pouring one more though. Couldn't pull it off without you, Sammy.
Number 4.
Sintra, please. Do not leave me, please.
Sintra, I'm sorry. Sintra, please don't leave me.
When it comes to telling a story, I would argue that the ending is the most important part to get right, simply because it's the last thing your audience interacts with before they leave your world. A really good ending can create lifelong fans of a series and have people demanding for more of your story. A poorly executed ending, on the other hand, could lead the fans to forget about how amazing the rest of the experience was due to the bad taste that you leave in their mouth at the end. This mistake can completely bury a franchise and sometimes even necessitate a full reboot of the entire series. My entry for number 4 is on this list purely because of the ending, and that's Firewatch.
What's in this cave down here?
NFS tells people not to go too far in there. It's pretty dangerous. You're in it, aren't you?
It doesn't seem that dangerous. Whoa, whoa! Ah, no!
Henry!
Seriously, it's completely fine in here.
Damn it.
Now make no mistake, Firewatch is not a bad game. Hell, it might actually be in my top games list that I'm trying to compile right now. The game features an interesting suspenseful story and some of the best voice acting in any game I've seen all year. But that ending... The ending to this game reminds me of Assassin's Creed 3. In both games, it feels really rushed, almost like the developers ran out of time or money and just had to wrap the game up immediately and release it before a deadline. The ending to this game is such a disappointment when you consider the game that comes before it. It feels really cheap and throws away all the stakes that had been created throughout the game. I played through the game 3 times to see if I'd feel differently, but it actually only exposed more problems each time I did. Object interaction in this game is just pointless. It's as pointless as that from the Order 1886, as most objects you pick up and look at don't do anything at all that's interesting or relevant. The game's promise of exploration of the park also rings false, as the game restricts your movements by providing only the necessary items at specific points in the story. I mean, you might feel free to backtrack and look for stuff, but there really isn't anything interesting anywhere that the game doesn't actually want you to go. The funny thing is, I probably would never have noticed these things if I hadn't been so negatively affected by the ending to the game. First impressions may be important, but last impressions are usually what people will remember, and for me, the ending to Firewatch nearly ruins an otherwise really cool game.
Somebody cut the comms.
What?
I'm out here and the wire is cut clean through.
Wait, you're already there? You're not in your tower?
No, I'm not.
Then who is?
Number 3. Now, if you're one of the 36 people that watched my Technomancer review, you know that I have a liking for stories that address issues of inequality and class-based warfare. Seeing the little people try to stand up and fight for themselves always makes me feel biased towards liking the story. That being said, it takes a colossal screw-up to make me dislike a game that's based around these kind of themes. But one game this year actually managed to achieve just that. Homefront: The Revolution.
Our country has been taken from us. Only together can we take it back. We must make their numbers a weakness and their tanks a burden.
This game's similarities in themes to the Red Dawn movies was part of the appeal for me. The game is based around rallying various districts together to fight for the common good of the people against your oppressors. Unfortunately, in translation, the game is bad, just plain bad, with controls that seem to be fighting the player, numerous hilarious and game-breaking bugs, and a cast of uninspired characters that seem to have dialogue coming from a totally different game, as it really doesn't fit into this game world. The district rallying element gets extremely repetitive and mindless, as they didn't bother to make the districts different enough, so eventually it feels like you're just doing the same thing on loop after a while. This game also has a very strong unfinished vibe to it, as it also seems like the developers ran out of time and simply released the game in an unfinished state. Oh, and as a bonus, the story sucks too. So yeah, look, I don't have many positives to say about this game, except that the world looks interesting, I guess.
And do it, you son of a bitch!
And you're looking for someone to tell you what to do, somebody to show you a way out.
This is a message for the terrorist group calling themselves the resistance.
This is the moment. This is our only chance.
I like Walker, but is all this risk worth it for one man?
Your little revolution.
The KPA is stronger than you.
It's finished.
If you want out of this hell, we're gonna have to fight our way out. Don't let me down.
Number 2. Now, I have a very bad relationship with gimmicks. Like, in general. I'm not even proud of this, but I'm always the very last person to accept or get on board with anything that I consider to be a gimmick. To this very day, I still hate having to watch movies in 3D. Like, to me, it just feels unnecessary. And I know at this point, it's probably just me being stubborn. However, every now and then, there are some gimmicks that I do fully buy into. Especially when the idea seems to have so much potential. When I heard that a video game was going to be combined with a live-action series with a huge budget behind both of them, I could only imagine the possibilities and how absolutely awesome this was going to turn out. Unfortunately, here we are. Quantum Break.
It destroys us all. When Paul came back, he took away the only person who could stop the end of time. My brother, Will. Thing is, when time broke and changed Paul, it changed me too.
This game, like, I still cannot believe I got suckered into this thing. I even installed Windows 10 for a while just for this game. So what exactly was I sold on? Well, on the surface, this game had the backing of Microsoft, impressive graphics, and an impressive cast. I mean, Littlefinger is in this game. Unfortunately, both this game and its accompanying live-action series are guilty of the same crime, just being painfully mediocre. You know those series that you watch because your friend recommended it, and then you never trust their opinion on anything ever again? Yeah, the live-action series for this game is one of those. And the game is just so mediocre, and painfully so. The most average third-person shooter you can come up with the only slightly interesting aspect being the time-based powers that you can use to just toss enemies around. What hurts most about Quantum Break is that it had the potential to be so much more, but the focus seems to have been put into the wrong areas. I guess the large corporate influence can be blamed for that. I guess we'll never know. All we have now is one of the most promising games of the year that was quickly forgotten once better games arrived.
In everything you've seen, do I stop before you're dead?
Alright, so before we get into number 1, let's just take a look at some dishonorable mentions. I'm not going to talk a lot about these. I just wanted to list them out as they didn't affect me as the games on this list, but they were disappointing all the same.
Faith, are you there?
Had a run-in with Kruger, but I got something for it.
I'm taking her out.
It's time to be the badasses we were born to be. Live together or die alone.
Oh, he is good. He is really good.
Oh, it's another group of players. Brace for PvP.
You guys ready?
Number 1. My favorite game genres are RPGs and platformers. If you've seen my top 10 list over the last 2 years, that shouldn't be hard to tell. It's one of the reasons I keep an eye on indie games, since they tend to produce the deepest experiences from both those genres. The final game on this list had me hyped from the moment I saw its trailer at last year's E3. It was also backed by a powerful name in the video game industry, and once again a huge company to provide the necessary budget. Unfortunately, once this game came out, I was sadly reminded of the worst aspects of hype culture. ReCore. ReCore promised an interesting visual premise: a lone survivor living in an apocalyptic desert world run by machines. The presence of Keiji Inafune, the creator of Mega Man, promised that the platforming would be top-notch, challenging, and a lot of fun. The presence of Microsoft was a sign that at least the budget would be there, or the distribution, allowing the game to look really good despite its indie roots. And being an indie game would allow the game to focus on achieving its niche rather than trying to meet deadlines or appeal to a wider audience. Unfortunately, the game provided neither a decent challenge nor a fun time. From a boring story to major bugs, graphical glitches, brain-dead AI, simplistic combat, long load time, like this game has all of them. It almost serves as a checklist for all the ways you can do a game wrong. The greatest offense this game commits, though, is that it seems to have been released in an unfinished state. Again, that's the third game on this list that comes out with that problem, with many textures not loading up in the game-breaking bugs that could necessitate a restart of the entire game, and terrible optimization across the board on all platforms. I suspect the only reason people are still talking about this game is to make lists like these, and it will only be referred to in the future as the game that could have been great but failed horribly.
It won't be easy.
That core is mine.
If you remember these lessons, you will survive. If anyone can, it's you. Love you always, Dad.
Well guys, that's my list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you agree or disagree with the list, feel free to share your opinion or share your own list. Remember, this is just my opinion. I'm just one guy, and if you don't agree, it's perfectly fine. Video games are art, and every game will appeal to somebody else differently. I'm sure each and every one of these games has fans out there, but they just didn't work for me. They fell flat. Thanks for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.